I know this video is a little long, but I want to explain these things before alpha's over and before it's too late to add any new features. I came up with a list of ideas that I think are really good ideas. Some of it's not even just mine, and we all have our own list of mods that we want to have become vanilla. I will get to my list of mods that I want to see vanilla later, but I have also restricted myself with that list as much as possible. I know it's really easy to get carried away with, ooh, I like this mod, I'm going to add that. I want that to be vanilla. Right. I think allowing blocks to be placed into the same space as others, Medieval Engineers has this as well. They have walls that can be placed over other walls. And I'd like to see something like a button panel be able to be placed in the same space as a sound block and a light. And a lot of things like that. And the cool thing about that is that that can actually work with my next idea, which is the ability of placing a frame on the ground, just like you can normally anyways. But in this case, instead of placing a frame specific to, let's say, a reactor or a cargo, you can place a typical frame and put the core that you want. So you basically you hit the G key and you go through the list of cores, and there'd be a cargo core or a reactor core or anything like that. You stick the core into this frame and then you build it, and it'll just turn into like this metal block. And there's nothing on any of the surfaces, and I'll explain why. The ports that you want on the surfaces has always been an issue for a lot of people, of which way the ports are. You can design a small ship, but you need a large conveyor block on a small ship, but there's only two sides that have the three small ports, four sides that have the large ports. If you can't really get the 90-degree, or you can't get whatever, you just can't really do anything you want with those ports. So I propose that once the frame and the core is built, it will just become a block. Then you whip out another mode or another tool or something like that, so you don't have the bright yellow thing staring you in the face all the time. On a large block on a small ship, you'd be able to have a grid of 3x3, so it's kind of like tic-tac-toe, just like the three little tiny ports that you see on the large conveyor block. The three ports that are right next to each other. You can have three ports above that. You can have three ports below that, or if it's completely clear, you can replace all that with one large port. Or let's say a reactor or a cargo, since they allow things to travel through them anyways, like a small cargo block on a station is kind of like a conveyor block. It's got ports on all six sides. Well, why couldn't that? Why couldn't any of these things have, let's say, a vent be replaced instead of a port? So it could be heavily customizable, especially the small ship, large blocks on a small ship, like the large conveyor block on a small ship has a lot of customization that should have on there, so you can make whatever you need instead of being restricted to what it has already or having to go download a mod. You should be able to. So basically, so it starts off like this: you place down a frame, you click a core into that frame, and you can see something show up on there, and then build it, and it'll just be this plain metal block. Then you go through and you place the ports that you want on there, or the vents that you want on there, maybe something else that can go on the surface. And I say vents because obviously putting this obscure extra block from a port just doesn't seem right for a vent. It's just a disperse of gas and pressure into a room. It just doesn't seem right to have an entire block taken up for that. On top of that, with the last thing I said before that, which was to be able to overlap things, and this is how they're combined together, is that, let's say you put down a button panel that has the four buttons, and one of the corners of that block that it's in, it technically takes up the three blocks that I'm talking about, the tic-tac-toe grid that I'm talking about. Above that, in the middle, you can place a sound block, because that would take up the middle part of the grid. And then above that, you can have a light. And I know if you have too many lights, obviously you just restrict it down to having only one light per block. So it can only be, you can place the light anywhere you want, but you can only place one light in that open space. So that's my concept of those two things, and I think that they're very like each other. They're very alike. So, um, the next thing that I have a big problem with that should be fixed or should be introduced or whatever is the first person shooter aspect of the game. It's very stuttery, and I kind of understand that to a degree because you need what other players see to catch up to what the other player is. The whole latency thing is kind of it's technical to explain, but and I understand why you're aiming at somebody and suddenly they're skipping, basically like teleporting an extra step to the side or whatever because that's the direction that they decided to go. It's just the image of that person catching up with where that person actually is, but it's still stuttery. It should not be that stuttery. And the stuttery part is not really the worst part. Also, aiming down the sights of the gun is kind of. I know this game wasn't really originally designed for first-person shooter, but there's so many different things to do with the first-person shooter. They introduced the 3 new guns. They have spiders and cyber wolves, and there's probably going to be even more. A lot more people are getting involved with the arena kind of first-person shooter aspects. They really need to focus on fixing that first-person shooter aspect, and especially the zooming in with the gun. The zooming in of the gun is not. It's not cheating. You're not zooming in. It looks like you're zooming in. Technically, you are zooming in, but you're actually zooming into the focus that you're supposed to have. It's the field of view that you're supposed to have. The reason why you have such a wide view is because in real life you actually have 180 plus view with your eyes, with your peripherals, and that's what that whole wide perspective is supposed to replace, so you can see everything. But when you focus down a iron sights, it's supposed to act as if you're seeing the view that you're supposed to be seeing originally anyways. I don't know how else to explain that. So anyways, my list of the mods that should be vanilla, um, I have obviously conveyor hinges. That's obvious. I mean, you have pistons, you have rotors, but conveyor hinges, there's none of that, or any hinges at all, or a gimbal, anything like that. That'd be great. My list of mods is obviously really short. I mean, I have conveyor hinges and I have capacitors. That's it. These things I don't understand why they're not actually part of the vanilla. Now with the capacitors, it makes sense that excuse me, it doesn't make sense that the large ship or the station battery is 1 block, but when it comes to a battery being on a small ship, it's 12 blocks. That just doesn't seem right. But and it's also it's just ridiculously obscured. It's huge. It's kind of off centered. It's not a full block. It's 2/3 of a block of a full block. But there has to be a small block that's a battery or a wider variety of batteries, I guess is what I'm saying. Especially for the small ship. It'd be great to include the door that they just introduced, the offset door. It'd be great to be able to put a panel in that little tiny space, a button panel, so you can have your own little. So basically, you put 2 doors right next to each other and have the buttons for the airlock behind it. Maybe even a vent inside there too. So this is what I'm talking about, like the customizable surfaces with some of the blocks that are mods are very well done. Which, by the way, the vent being a part of the conveyor is actually a mod. I really love that mod. But I don't want to see that vanilla. I want to see the upgraded version of that into vanilla. Also, the cockpits with the LCDs, that's very important in my opinion. Maybe not so much the LCDs where you can see it as an actual thing, and I know a lot of people might have a problem with this, but it would be great if they, when they fix the HUD, because the HUD obviously needs to be upgraded, it needs to be fixed. They can have it to where when you get into this special cockpit, or any cockpit should have this, the cockpit itself should have its own programmable system, should have its own whatever, just like a programmable block, but it's built into the cockpit. That should be it. Also with the LCDs, instead of it being displayed in front of you, which is fine, it should also be a part of your HUD. So when you get in, it loads up the LCD style HUD, which it can be programmable, just like an LCD can. That'd be the whole point of that. And this is my list. I hope this wasn't too long. I hope people can get this to actually work. The whole making a frame and then putting a core in it, that wasn't just my idea. I mean, some of it was, most of it was, but there was at least 3 other people that got involved in this conversation. We basically came to the conclusion that this is how it should be done. I don't remember their names. It was a YouTube comment section. I'd have to go digging through a lot of my stuff to find out where that was, or give credit to the people who helped me come up with that idea. And yeah, that's my list. I hope something could be done about it before alpha's over. Take care.